G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to another episode of Dream Fights. And in this episode, probably got the most requested fighter so far. I know it's only our fifth episode, but we have had lots of requests of different fighters. And Kostya Tszyu is the man I'm speaking of. And as I said, he has been the most requested fighter so far on the series so far. So if you don't if you haven't been here before and you're not quite sure how it works, what we do is we pick a fighter. In this case, it's Kostya Tszyu, and have a brief overview of his career, and then we pick him or put him in, or as I said, put him in. I'll spit that out eventually. Put him in with 10 other great fighters from different eras and see how he would have went. Now, I've got to say tonight, or this episode, it's a little bit similar to the Terence Crawford one I did a few weeks ago, but it is what it is. We'll continue on, but it's interesting just to see how different fighters would go against other great fighters. And as always, some interesting results. I've got the results in front of me here, and I'm very surprised by a few of these results. Not so much the results or who you guys and girls out there thought would win, but just the percentages. A little lopsided in a few of them. Now, this is probably again our best result too, by the way, as far as people voting. We had sort of about 50 odd people per fight that voted. So thank you to everyone that jumped on Instagram and voted. And as I said, we'll go through those in this episode. All right, let's have a little bit of a look at our subject of this episode, and that is the Thunder from Down Under, Kostya Tszyu. Of course, a Russian descent fighter, and was a former world amateur champion in 1991. And I think if you speak to a lot of Aussies about that, they remember him so well, or they obviously jumped on the Kostya Tszyu train back then when he absolutely schooled Vernon Forrest back in the day in Sydney, the World Championships. And then launched in his professional career. He moved here, went under the tutelage of Johnny Lewis, trained alongside the likes of Jeff Fennick and Jeff Harding, just to name a couple, and made his debut. And I remember this very well because I was there. It was at Princess Park in Melbourne, the Carlton Football Club home ground, and he absolutely demolished another Olympian, by the way, by the name of Daryl Hiles. So he was the unfortunate fighter that was the pro debut opponent of Kostya Tszyu, and in front of about 40,000 people, I think it was, or 38,000 or something, he made mincemeat of Daryl Hiles. He didn't muck around. He moved on. He had a couple of really good fights, including one in just his third fight was against Tony Jones, who had, I think he had 24 or 25 fights at the time, had a very, very good resume, stopped him in just 2 rounds, and in his fourth fight, he came up against former world champion Juan Laporte, fought him in Sydney and won a 10-round decision. He then, I was at this fight as well, this is at Festival Hall in Melbourne, knocked out Sammy Fuentes in the first round. Now, Sammy Fuentes had challenged for a world title against Julio Cesar Chavez, absolutely wiped him out in 1 round. Stevie Larimore, who had beaten Lester Ellis 4 years earlier. He really earned his world title shot here, by the way. He beat Livingston Bramble down the track again, another former world champion. He won a 10-round decision over him in Newcastle, or Zoocastle, it's referred to these days. Another world title challenger in his next fight against Hector Lopez, another Julio Cesar Chavez victim. And yet another one in his next fight was against Angel Hernandez, who also lost to Julio Cesar Chavez. A bit of a pattern back then in his world title shot, and really earned that crack against Jake Rodriguez in 1995 at the MGM Grand. He stopped Jake the Snake Rodriguez in 6 rounds to win the IBF 140-pound title. Backed it up pretty quickly a couple of months later with a decision win over Roger Mayweather. That was in defense of that title. Defended against the likes of Hugo Pineda, to name a couple. Vince Phillips was what did he defend it? He defended it 5 times before losing the belt in 1997 in an upset 10-round knockout loss to Vince Phillips. Never got a chance to rectify that result, unfortunately, but he, again, like he always did, he worked his way back to world title shot with wins over Calvin Grove, Rafael Ruiz, and came up against Miguel Angel Gonzalez in 1999. and won the WBC 140-pound title. And after that, there was 2 fights later. He had the 6th-round stoppage of Julio Cesar Chavez. It was an interesting fight, that one, because it was sad as far as watching what happened to Julio Cesar Chavez, but just awe-inspiring as far as the demolition job that Kostya Tszyu did on Julio Cesar Chavez that night. Some really good wins over the likes of Shambar Mitchell. Of course, who can forget the Zab Judah knockout win in Las Vegas in 2001. Other wins over Ben Tucky, Jesse James Laha, another win over Shambar Mitchell. And unfortunately, it all came to an end in 2005 when he retired on the stool in England, in Manchester, and against Ricky Hatton. And that was the last fight of Kostya Tszyu's career in 2005, June the 4th to be exact. So an unbelievable career by Kostya Tszyu. It's interesting that he never actually went to the Olympics. They were only a year after the World Championships, and it's really, it's a good sort of thought process to think, could he have been an Olympic gold medalist as well? But doesn't matter. He was an undisputed 140-pound champion back when there was only 3 belts. But I think no one's got any doubts that if there were 4 belts around at the time, then Kostya Tszyu would have certainly cleaned up all the bouts. Who we got in there? Pound for pound king. What do you got there, mate? We've got OG, Glenn. How are you guys? So pound for pound. I remember when they used to use the festival hall for wrestling. They certainly did there, mate. And they also did, I think, concerts and all that sort of stuff as well. I think that they're redoing it up at the moment, festival hall. But I remember the night, that was the Sammy Fuentes fight I'm talking about. And I can still hear Sammy Fuentes hitting the floor. He hit it that hard, just pulverized by Kostya Tszyu. So we've got 10 fighters to go through tonight, and as always, very, very difficult to pick the winners. But we'll do our best. First of all, the way it works is I will go through the poll results, and then obviously get some comments from you guys, and as well as giving my thoughts on who I think wins and why against some of the other great fighters of his era. We've got Young Guns in the chat there. What do you got there, mate? I checked out Jeff Fennick after the stream, and he was a tough SOB. Azuma kept doing dirty tactics, and Jeff didn't back down. Azuma hit him way after the bell. So, Jeff, okay, here's a combo for you. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I'm glad you checked him out, Young Guns. We did, Jeff. Was it last week or the week before? I think it was. Was it last? Who did we do last week? No, it was Canelo last week, so it would have been the week before that. But I'm glad you checked him out, Young Guns, because he's probably the sort of known as the best fighter that Australia has produced, arguably. What have we got there? Lewis Puente, salute from California. Welcome to the show, Lewis. Great to have you along, mate. Dennis Green, TV ringside. Festival Hall was epic. Certainly was, mate, back in the day. And every sort of older guy you talk to always, or boxing fan or boxer, whatever, they all have memories of Festival Hall, TV ringside. And they were the golden years of boxing. And I've spoken on here a few times or about it with my old mate, Ronnie Picken, who used to go to the Festival Hall pretty much, was it every Monday night or Friday night or whatever it was? Didn't even need to advertise. They would pack the place out with 2,000 or 3,000 people every single week. Yep, every weekend. They would have it. I'm not sure it was Monday. If it wasn't Monday, it was definitely Friday. And they had a full card of fights. And, yep, they would get 2,000 or 3,000 people there every single weekend. So try getting that to a non-world title fight these days. It's just not going to happen. All right, well, let's get into the program, shall we? And we're going to start with, this was one guy that I sort of ummed and ahed about whether I would actually include him. But I think his resume, just while he was champion, did enough to put him in the mix. I'm referring to Timothy Bradley. There is the Desert Storm. Retired with a record of 33-2-1 with 13 knockouts. Turned pro in 2004 and got his first world title fight. I was just looking at this before. It was in 2008 when he beat Junior Witter with a 12-round split decision. Defended it, 7 times before moving up to fight Manny Pacquiao. I was actually at that fight, the first fight that is, at the MGM Grand in June of 2012. I don't think he won the fight, but the judges disagreed. Gave him the split decision, 115-113 on 2 cards and 113-115 on the other card. Had that unbelievable war with Ruslan Provodnikov after that in defense of that title. Also won Manuel Marquez. Probably doesn't get spoken enough about that win. It was very, very impressive, that win over Marquez. Lost the rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Earned his way back to another shot with wins over Jesse Vargas and Brandon Rios. And then his last fight in 2016, lost the rubber match against Manny Pacquiao, again at the MGM Garden in a more one-sided fight this time. Manny Pacquiao getting the job done. All right, so who wins and why? Let's go to the poll. And look, even though I wasn't surprised by most people, well, nearly everyone backing Kostya Tszyu, I thought there might be a few more that might have backed Timothy Bradley. But in fact, 96% of you out there thought that Kostya Tszyu would get the job done over Timothy Bradley Jr. Now, look, I do think Kostya Tszyu would have won this fight, but this would have been extremely tough. All you got to do is look at the fights that Timothy Bradley had with, well, obviously the likes of Manny Pacquiao. He didn't take a backward step, but he did. But strategically, he wasn't running from Manny Pacquiao. He was boxing from the outside, and was a very smart fighter. And look at his record, only 2 losses, both to Manny Pacquiao. They're the only fighter that could beat Timothy Bradley. And as I said before, with wins over the likes of Rios and Vargas and Marquez, Provodnikov. Even before beating Manny, he beat Joel Casamayor, Devin Alexander, Lamont Peterson. So some really, really good wins there by Timothy Bradley. So it would not be easy. This would be a war. And I think Timothy Bradley would give Kostya Tszyu all he could handle. And I think though Kostya Tszyu probably would relish the battle as he always did. I think if Timothy Bradley boxed on the outside like he did probably in the first Manny Pacquiao fight, maybe he could possibly get a win over Kostya. But I just think Kostya would wear him down. He would draw Timothy Bradley into a firefight. And I think he wears Timothy Bradley down and wins a 12-round decision. I don't think he stops Timothy Bradley. I think Timothy Bradley is too clever, too smart to be stopped by Kostya. But I think Kostya Tszyu wins a 12-round decision. And I'm probably thinking maybe 8 rounds to 4. It's probably what I'm looking at there for Kostya Tszyu. What do you got there, guys? Glenn, too reckless. Kostya by KO late or on points. Pound for pound king says Tszyu for the win. Glenn says he was very aggressive, but I think that hurts his chances against Kostya. Yeah, I agree with that, Cal. Let's bring back 10 boxing. I agree, mate. Yeah, look, Bradley could look when he boxed from the outside. He could obviously do some damage, and he did that against Manny Pacquiao. Fought very, very well in that first fight. Probably got caught up a little bit more in the rematches, which was to his detriment. But I think if he fought on the outside against Kostya Tszyu, he's a chance. But at some stage, you would think he would plant the feet and trade with Kostya, which is exactly what Kostya would want. Now, Kostya wasn't overly graceful with his feet, not the fastest guy in the world. But I think if Timothy Bradley engaged Kostya, I think Kostya outmuscles him, as I said, for that 12-round decision. All right, let's go on to the next fighter. Who we got here? We have the Macho Man, Hector Macho Camacho, retired with a record of 79-6-3 with 38 KOs. The Puerto Rican legend turned pro in 1980. Worked his way through the division until he got, this is at 130, until he got his first world title fight. That was against Rafael Limon, the great Mexican fighter. He won by 5th round stoppage for the WBC 130-pound title. Beat the likes of Rafael Solis. Jose Luis Ramirez was next. Now, he won that in 83. He had 4 defenses, went up in 1985 to beat Jose Luis Ramirez. And probably, I think, his most dominant performance that I can remember, especially around that time. Ramirez had beaten Edwin Rosario by 4th round knockout. Was expected to maybe do the same against Camacho to outmuscle him, and Hector Camacho won it by, 119, 112, 118, 111, and 119, 109. So that's how one-sided it was. Strangely enough, in his next fight, he beat all-time trainer legend Freddie Roach, surprisingly, before the fight that I think was maybe the turning point for his career. He actually won the fight, strangely enough, was against Edwin Rosario, another great Puerto Rican. He won a split decision over 12 rounds at Madison Square Garden, but didn't really be the same fighter after that. He won a really dull decision over Cornelius Bolzer Edwards, Howard Davis Jr., Ray Mancini. He also beat a guy by the name of Tom Hanks, if you can believe that. Well, Tommy Hanks anyway. Then he had a 12-round decision over Vinny Pazienza. And then his first loss against Greg Haugen in 1991, a real upset that was. He avenged the loss a few months later, but then came up against the great Julio Cesar Chavez in 1992 and was pretty much pummeled from post for 12 rounds and lost a lopsided decision. But then he moved up in weight and it all changed. He went up to welterweight and lost to Felix Trinidad, but then had great fights over the likes of, or great fights with the likes of Roberto Duran. Who else did he fight there? Oh, and of course, Sugar Ray Leonard. Oscar De La Hoya actually beat Sugar Ray Leonard, by the way, in 97. Lost to De La Hoya in 97. He kept fighting, though, all the way to, and he actually, was it that he had a draw with Jorge Vaca, the former WBC champion, and he fought all the way to 2010. His last fight was a 10-round decision loss to Saul Duran. Where was that? In Kissimmee, whatever it was, there somewhere in the States. But that was his last fight, and unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, he was shot and killed in Puerto Rico in tragic circumstances, and that was it for the Macho Man. All right, guys, so who have we got? What's that, Glenn? Kostya better in most areas, but hits much harder. Late KO. Great matchup, both willing to trade. All right, to the poll. And again, really surprised at this one. 92% thought that Kostya Tszyu would beat Hector Camacho. And again, just like the Timothy Bradley fight, I do think Kostya Tszyu would win. But we're talking about Hector Camacho here, just a super talent. Now, 140 was a very, very good fighter. Still at his peak there. I know he lost to Julio Cesar Chavez at that weight and his biggest fight at the weight, but he'd also beaten or had those two fights with Greg Haugen, Vinny Pazienza. Now, I do think Kostya Tszyu gets the win, but I think this could probably be by decision. I've got a feeling it would be a little bit like the Julio Cesar Chavez fight, where Kostya would be just pretty much trying to cut the ring off against Camacho, who would be on his toes, that southpaw stance, to be flicking out the jab, looking to pivot off with the straight left hand and sort of pinpoint Kostya coming in. Now, Kostya, you got to remember, the only probably fault I had on Kostya at the time, didn't move his head a lot. Very upright, chin up in the air, that Russian style. So he would be open to maybe some counters from Hector Camacho, but I just think the fact that Camacho wasn't a big puncher is not good when you're coming up against someone like Kostya Tszyu, who would just be relentless. And when I say relentless, I don't mean by just being manic and on him throwing wild punches. I'm talking about just being him in front of him for the entire fight. A little bit like Chavez was. Just he'd move to the right, and there was Chavez. He'd move to the left, there was Chavez. He had no escape, and I just think Kostya Tszyu would do the same. He would take center ring, he would cut Camacho off, make him engage, and I just think his strength, his power would be too much for Camacho, and I think he would win a clear-cut 12-round decision, probably a little bit like the Timothy Bradley fight. I'll probably say 8 rounds to 4, maybe even 9 rounds to 3. What's that, OG? I was working with a Pommy backpacker at the time of the Hatton fight. Was so confident with Ricky every time he got paid, put $100 every week. He got paid for months. Well, that was what was that, 2005, I think, did I say, with the Hatton fight. All right, well, that's my decision on that one, guys. I think Kostya Tszyu by 12-round decision. I'll keep moving on, but if you want to comment, I will go back to them. Who wins, Kostya Tszyu or Hector Macho Camacho? And again, I'm surprised that 92% went for Kostya Tszyu. I'm not sure with these types of fights whether maybe some people that are voting aren't familiar with the guys that we're putting on the B side, and maybe they just know a little bit more about Kostya and just think, well, no one could possibly beat Kostya, we'll just vote for him. But I'm fascinated that only 8% thought that Camacho had a chance to beat Kostya Tszyu. And this next one is even more surprising, and I am referring to the late Meldrick. No, sorry, he's not the late. I was thinking of Pernell Whitaker. Sorry, Meldrick Taylor, the teenage phenomenon back in the day. He turned pro in 1984 after winning the Olympic gold medal in 1984 at the LA Olympics. Turned pro against Luke Leshy with a first round stoppage. And he was moved pretty quickly as well. Now, he got his first shot. I'm just looking there. In 1986, he beat Harold Brazier, Howard Davis Jr., Howard Davis Jr. was an Olympian. Brazier, I think, ended up fighting for world titles, but this is later. Got his first world title fight or opportunity against James Buddy McGirt in 1988, another fellow great fighter, and totally dominated Buddy McGirt. He made numerous defenses before he ran into, as you probably guess, Julio Cesar Chavez. And he was winning that fight. The scores at the time of stoppage, he got stopped, of course, with about 2 seconds left in round number 12. He was winning 107, 102 on one card, 108, 101 on the other card. He was actually trailing on the other card. Chuck Giampa, what were you thinking? But all he had to do was stay away in that 12th round, and he didn't. And unfortunately, that fight just turned his whole career on its head. Now, as I said before, 2 seconds were left in the fight, and it was named the Ring Magazine Fight of the Year, but he just didn't recover. He ended up getting another shot. He had, 5 fights, got another shot at a world title, this time at 154, which is probably a bit too big. That's 14 pounds over the Chavez weight. Was stopped in just 4 rounds by Terry Norris. Lost his next fight to Crisante Espana and just really didn't recover. Julio Cesar Chavez gave him a rematch in 1994, but he was stopped in the 8th round, and then it was pretty much all downhill after that. Retired in 2002 with a loss against Wayne Martel, and retired with a record of 38-8-1 with 20 knockouts. Now, I'll go to the results, and again, this one really surprised me. 91% thought that Kostya Tszyu would win over Meldrick Taylor. So that is probably the most puzzling one out of all these results, in my opinion, as we go through them. Only 9% of people thought that Meldrick Taylor would beat Kostya Tszyu. Wow. Glenn says, Taylor, hell of a fighter. This is a tough one. Well, I'm with you there, Glenn. It would be extremely tough. Now, this is the type of style that Kostya Tszyu, I think, would not like. Meldrick Taylor was super quick hands, super quick feet, could punch a bit as well, but just super talented, obviously an Olympic gold medalist, and I think he would give Meldrick Taylor would give Kostya Tszyu all he could handle. I'm going to go for Kostya Tszyu, and I'll tell you why. The reasoning why now, look, I was going to say Zab Judah, but I think he just caught Zab Judah cold. Great win by Kostya, but it's really hard to say what would have happened if the fight had gone past the second round. I'm probably likening Meldrick Taylor to maybe someone like a Shamba Mitchell. It's probably the closest one I could probably see, although a better fighter than Shamba Mitchell. But the fact that Kostya was able to get to Shamba Mitchell, I think he'd do the same against Meldrick Taylor. I think Meldrick Taylor for the first 5 or 6 rounds would be extremely difficult for Kostya Tszyu to pin down. As I said, super quick with his hands, super quick on his feet. Some brilliant, skillful boxing had Meldrick Taylor. I just think, though, as the fight went on, I think you might even see a little bit like what happened with Chavez. Maybe it's not to that extent, but I think you would see Kostya get closer and closer and closer, start to close the distance, start to bang the body, bang inside with those uppercuts and hooks, and I just think he would wear Meldrick Taylor down to the point where I think he stops Meldrick Taylor in 10 or 11 rounds. Very rarely do we get stoppages in these super fights or these dream fights, but I could just see Kostya's will and power and strength just wearing Meldrick Taylor down, and as I said, getting him out of there in about 10 or 11 rounds. Glenn says Kostya just. Dennis says Kostya just on points and way better than Shamba. Yeah, obviously a lot better, Glenn, than Shamba Mitchell, but similar type of style, just that typical American, well, not really flashy, but just a good all-round fighter who's super slick, super quick with his hands and feet, and had just a similar style. Was he as good as Meldrick Taylor? No, I'm talking about Shamba Mitchell, but it just gives me a little bit of an idea, I think, the fight we would see. But look, if people out there said that Meldrick Taylor would beat Kostya Tszyu, I wouldn't argue. It would be a very, very tough fight. And again, I can't believe that only 9% of the voters thought that Meldrick Taylor would beat Kostya Tszyu. So I've got it by 10th or 11th round stoppage for Kostya Tszyu. Let's move on. We'll go to fight number 4 and another tough one. Actually, it wasn't tough for me to pick the winner, but it would be very, very entertaining. And I'm referring to the Pazman, my favourite international fighter of all time, Vinny Pazienza, the Tasmanian Devil. Turned pro in 1983, finished with a record of 50 wins, 10 losses, and no draws with 30 knockouts. The Pazman. Now, as I said, he turned pro in 1983, got his first opportunity in 1987 in one of the great grudge matches of all time. If you haven't seen this one, make sure you jump on YouTube and watch it. It was against the late, great Greg Haugen. Took place in Providence, Rhode Island, which was Vinny Pazienza's hometown, and in front of 15,000 screaming fans. Got home in a pretty disputed decision in the end. It was a 15-round fight back then. Lost the belt in the rematch in the next fight, only, about 8 months later, on neutral ground in Atlantic City. Greg Haugen getting a unanimous decision in that one. A couple of fights later, he fought Roger Mayweather for the WBC 140-pound title. That was on the undercard of Sugar Ray Leonard and Donnie Lalonde, I remember, and lost a lopsided decision in that one. Again, like most of these guys do, worked his way back, fought Hector Camacho in 1990, lost a 12-round decision. Won the rubber match against Greg Haugen with a 10-round decision. And when did he get his next stop? He actually stopped former world champion Lloyd Honeyghan in 1993. Went up in weight a lot at that stage, by the way. Went up to, super middleweight, and had the fight with Roberto Duran, or 2 fights with Roberto Duran. Then came up against Roy Jones Jr. Now, he was stopped in 6 rounds, but it was a highly entertaining fight. That was for the IBF super middleweight title in 1995. Lost against Harold Graham in England. Nothing would hold back Vinny Pazienza, though, because he kept coming and fought all the way to 2004. Along the way, he had losses to Dana Rosenblatt, Aaron Davis, and Eric Lucas for the WBC super middleweight title, and retired in 2004 with a 10-round decision over Tocker Pudwill in Mashantucket, wherever the hell that is. So that is Vinny Pazienza. As I said, 50 wins, 10 losses, and 30 KOs. So who wins this one? Let's go to the poll. And 87% thought that Kostya Tszyu would beat Vinny Pazienza. And I didn't mention, actually, OG, you've sort of brought it up there about what a story. There's actually a movie, of course, about Vinny Pazienza called Bleed for This. He actually had a car accident, broke his neck, and was told he would never fight again, barely walk again, let alone fight again. But he worked his way back. I think we've all seen the footage of him with the head piece on that kept his neck from moving, that was drilled into his body, and he was doing weights and all this sort of stuff and exercises to get back, and he did. And what a story. So if you haven't seen that, I'm sure you have. Check out Bleed for This. But a truly inspirational guy. I've met Vinny Pazienza probably 3 or 4 times. He's a gentleman. He's conscious of what he did, though. He's got a tattoo on his hand that says 5 times on it. And when I got the photos with him, he made sure every photo he takes, he makes sure he gets that hand up there, or the fist. But a lovely, lovely guy, and a real character of the sport. And I used to love watching him fight. He was overmatched in a lot of fights, don't get me wrong. But he would always turn it on. It was all about offense. It was all about entertaining the crowd. And just a truly great character of boxing, the Tasmanian Devil, Vinny Pazienza. So who wins? What do you got there, Glenn? Repeat of the Bradley fight, Costa easy on points, or maybe late round stoppage. Yeah, look, I think Kostya Tszyu wins this one. I think that Vinny Pazienza's reckless style, I think, would probably be his undoing. I think you would see a combination of Vinny Pazienza really going after Kostya Tszyu, and then you would see him on the back foot trying to outbox Kostya Tszyu. Now, you got to remember, too, there was probably two distinct types of fighter of what Vinny Pazienza was, from 135 to 140 right up to 168. He obviously was more of like a little barrel at 160 to 168. At sort of 135 to 140, he was actually very, very quick and a really good size for that weight. He was really quick and nimble on his feet and had fast hands. The thing that goes against him, again, probably like a lot of these fighters, is lack of power. Wasn't a big puncher. Even though he did have 30 knockouts in 50 wins, not a big puncher. And I just don't think he would have been able to keep Kostya Tszyu off him. I think this fight would have been really entertaining for the duration of it. I think he would have frustrated Kostya with his unpredictability. Remember, Kostya being that prototype Russian fighter, there was nothing flashy about him. There was nothing, like, very, very one-dimensional was Kostya, but he did everything very, very well. So, and obviously could punch. I just think he would be able to repel any sort of plan that Vinny Pazienza had. I think if Vinny Pazienza came at him, he'd probably have a bit more success, but I just think that would be playing into Kostya's hands, and as the fight went on, you would see Kostya start to chop him down. I think you'd mainly see Vinny on the outside trying to outbox Kostya, but I don't think that would work either. I think Kostya Tszyu far too strong, punches far too hard, and I think he might stop Vinny, actually. I think he might stop Vinny in 9, 10, 11 rounds. Let's just say 10th round stoppage. I think Kostya Tszyu gets to Vinny, and I don't think he knocks him out. I just think I can see the referee or maybe the corner stopping this fight around round 10. So that's my prediction for that one. Kostya Tszyu by 10th round stoppage. All right, we'll do one more, then we'll have a quick recap. And this one was a really, really tough one. Where are we? I'll go to the next slide. It is Miguel Cotto, the Puerto Rican legend. Had a record of 41-6, 33 knockouts, turned pro in 2001, and won his first world title. What year was it? It was, if I can bring it up, if I can find it, it was, there it is there. In 2004, he won the WBO super lightweight title, or 140-pound title, over Kelson Pinto by 6th round stoppage. Defended against the likes of Randall Bailey, DeMarcus Corley, good fighters. Paulie Malignaggi, 12-round decision over Paulie Malignaggi, Carlos Quintana, Zab Judah, which was a great win at the time for Miguel Cotto. Shane Mosley in a really big fight at Madison Square Garden before coming up against Antonio Margarito, where he was stopped in the 11th round. Remember, Margarito had all sorts of allegations thrown at him about having loaded wraps. Came back and had a win over Joshua Clottey for the WBO welterweight title. Actually won the WBO title, against Michael Jennings after that Margarito fight, and then defended against Clottey. Then that memorable fight with Manny Pacquiao at the MGM Grand in 2009. Went up to 154 after that, beat the likes of Yuri Foreman, Ricardo Mayorga, got the revenge fight over Antonio Margarita. Back-to-back losses against Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Austin Trout. And then shocked everyone by beating Sergio Martinez in 2014 for the WBC world middleweight title. That was. Beat our own Daniel Geale, then lost to Canelo Alvarez in 2015 and won the WBO 154-pound title against Yoshihiro Kamigaya. I think that's how you pronounce it, in 2017, before retiring after losing that belt to Saddam Ali in 2017. All right, guys, let's go to, what's that there? What size is the ring? That's a very good question. All these points that get brought up about different weights and years and all this sort of stuff. The size of the ring, let's say it's a 20-foot ring. Glenn, how's that? 20-foot ring. All right, Glenn says Cotto too big for a start. Yeah, well, but then again, what was it? Yeah, you're right. 140 is where he won his first world title, but ended up at 160 to the poll, and 70% said that Kostya Tszyu would beat Miguel Cotto. Now, this is another one that's so hard to pick. Very, very, very tough fight. Miguel Cotto, look, there was nothing flash about him. He was a stand-up, well, not stand-up. He actually slouched over a fair bit, but he was a stand-up type of boxer who wasn't overly fast, again, with his hands or feet, just a workmanlike fighter who just managed to get the job done all the time. Now, I'm going to go for Kostya Tszyu in this fight because I think Kostya Tszyu had just, I think he had, well, I did call him one-dimensional earlier, but he probably had one more dimension than what Miguel Cotto did. I don't think Miguel Cotto really had anything offer. Like, he wasn't a big puncher. He, as I said, wasn't really fast with his hands or feet. I've just got a feeling that Kostya, again, would be just too big and strong. I think it would be a little bit like the Pacquiao fight where Kostya would just get on top as the fight would go on. Now, I know Kostya's a totally different style to what Manny Pacquiao is, but the same sort of thing. I just think Kostya would break him down round by round by round and just get to him as the fight went on. And I could see Kostya probably stopping Miguel Cotto, again, in probably 10 or 11 rounds. I just think, the fight I probably liken it to, looking at it and having more of a think about it too, is probably the Chavez fight that with Kostya Tszyu. I think Miguel Cotto would be brave. He'd fight to the end, but I just think his style, not being overly great on his feet, not being, like, he could box, but not a great boxer. I just think that Kostya Tszyu would, as I said, break him down and just slowly get to him as the rounds went on, and I think he would stop Miguel Cotto in about 10 rounds. All right, Glenn disagrees. He says Cotto. Frankie says Kostya would have stopped Cotto. Jules, all right. What age are they fighting? Cotto late in his career at 140, better boxer but could be hurt. Early in his career, there to be hit. Well, Kostya obviously fought his whole career at 140, so let's just say this is the Kostya Tszyu that, probably around the time of the Zab Judah fight, I suppose. Although he had beaten Chavez before that. Yeah, I'm thinking, 2000, 2001. That's the Kostya Tszyu I'm looking at. And as for Cotto, probably around the time where he beat, I was just going to say Shane Mosley, but that was at 147. Although, was it? Or was it 140? Whatever it was. I just think, no matter what it was, Jules, I just think Kostya Tszyu breaks Miguel Cotto down. Yes, peak versus peak, pound for pound king. And Glenn is a lot bigger than Chavez. Yes, he is. Daniel, how are you there, mate? Cotto was a great mover, used the ring very well. Kostya wouldn't let that happen, cuts him off and finds him multiple times. Tszyu late KO. Yep, I agree there, Daniel. So there it is. So that is Kostya Tszyu by stoppage, by in my opinion, probably 50-50 amongst you guys out there on the poll. 70% say Kostya Tszyu would win. So a quick recap of all the... Actually, we won't do it now. We'll do it at the end. We're halfway through anyway. Yeah, Glenn, it is a tough one, mate. It is a really, really tough fight to pick. All right, we'll move on, and once we get to the end, we'll go over and recap all these fights. Let's move on to the next fight, number 6, and this time, this is where it starts to get really hard, guys. You thought these other ones were hard. Have a look at these ones. We'll start with the Pac-Man, Manny Pacquiao, 62-8-2, 39 knockouts, turned pro in 1995. Let's see. We'll go. I think if you've watched this the last few episodes, I think I went over Manny's record a couple of times. It was at Manny against Terence Crawford a couple of weeks ago, but we'll go through it again. 8 division world champion. He's fought the likes of, I'll go through Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez, Eric Morales. We'll keep moving. Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Antonio Margarito, Shane Mosley, Timothy Bradley Jr. I'm just going to keep going through them here, guys. Floyd Mayweather Jr., Jesse Vargas, our own Jeff Horn, Lucas Matisse, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman. I mean, we could go on and on and on about Manny Pacquiao. What a fight this would be. Let's go to the polls. Now, this is the first one that Kostya Tszyu has actually been beaten. 43% went for Kostya. 57% went for Manny Pacquiao. And what an explosive fight this would be. This is probably, out of all of them, I think would be the fight of this 10-fight series. You could just see that Manny Pacquiao, he loved the in and out, the multiple punch combinations he would throw. I think he would really frustrate Kostya Tszyu, who liked to probably set his feet and punch. I think he would really get frustrated by Pacquiao being in and out and off to the side. Now, this by the way, we're talking 2009, 2010 Manny Pacquiao. That's the fighter we're looking at. And I think that fighter, or that version of Manny Pacquiao would be too much for Kostya Tszyu, just by the speed. Now, Kostya Tszyu would be a lot bigger and stronger, I think, than Manny. That would give him an opportunity. But I just think the way that Manny fought around that time. Now, we're talking about the time where he beat, probably from when he beat Oscar De La Hoya in 2008. Then he beat, was it Ricky Hatton after that? Then Miguel Cotto, then Claudio Margarito. Probably the end of 2010. So probably 2009, 2010, when he had the 5 fights, let's say. De La Hoya, Hatton, Cotto, Claudio Margarito. Mosley was at the start of 2011. That was probably, I think, when we sort of started to see Manny just slow down a little bit, although he did obviously win multiple world titles after that. But I think that 2009, 2010 version of Manny would just be too much for Kostya. Just with the speed, the angles, the explosive punches. And I just think Kostya would just be trying to press the pace. But I just think that version of Manny Pacquiao was pretty much unstoppable back then. He really was. I think he was at his absolute peak in that fight. And I could probably see him chopping Kostya Tszyu up over the rounds. Could he stop Kostya? I'm not going to say he's going to stop Kostya. I think he wins a 12-round decision. But by the end of it, I think Kostya's face would be pretty marked up and sliced and diced, I would think. And I've got Manny Pacquiao by clear-cut decision over Kostya Tszyu. But it wouldn't be easy. Now, the caveat on this is if Manny decided to stop, plant his feet and engage with Kostya, because that could spell disaster for Manny. But I think back then, even though he did like to punch on with his opponents, he was very smart. And if you looked at the war, even though it only went 2 rounds with Hatton, the Margarito fight, he was so much bigger and stronger was Margarito. And what he did to De La Hoya, I know Oscar was way past his best, but I just think he was just something else. And I just think Kostya just wouldn't have the speed to be able to keep up with Pacquiao. And I just think Manny would have won, as I said, by 12-round decision. Dennis says Kostya takes a loss here. Would have been a brawl, pound for pound king, that's for sure. Glenn says Manny just too dynamic, hits way too hard, and southpaw to boot. Kostya gets stopped in 9 or 10. Frankie says, yep, could go either way, but Manny too quick. Glenn, look, I didn't put Aaron Pryor in this, mate. He was one of the first ones I wanted to put in, but look, and he was probably one of the greatest 140-pounders, Glenn. I just think, I'm not sure whether a lot of people, you obviously know a lot about Aaron, not a lot of people know enough about Aaron Pryor, even though I think it would have been a great, great fight. I'm probably going by the ones with the more fan engagement, and I'm just not sure a lot of these fans that maybe watch this know enough about Aaron Pryor. As bad as that is for the diehards, you obviously know a lot about him, Glenn, as do I. But I've just sort of gone by what I thought would be the 10 sort of most entertaining fights. Having said that, I think Aaron Pryor gives Kostya a great fight. I still think Kostya wins that, by the way, but he's not in the list, mate. Dennis, style-wise, really awkward matchup for Kostya. Daniel, Kostya holds his own, but Manny takes over late rounds by accumulation. Manny on points, yeah. Same way as I had Daniel, and I just think Manny, as I said, just too much at that stage of his career. All right, let's move on to fight number 7. What's that, Glenn? Yeah, Aaron Pryor was so wrong for Kostya. I get it, Glenn, and don't get me wrong. If we were going by the 10 best fighters to fight Kostya, then of course we'd probably have Aaron Pryor over the likes of maybe a Timothy Bradley or a Vinny Pazienza. But I'm just probably going with fights that maybe more boxing fans know more about. But having said that, as I said, Aaron Pryor, I think, would give Kostya Tszyu hell. I still think Kostya gets the win, though. And no need to put 5 question marks. I get it. All good, mate. All right, let's move on. Another tough one. We go to Oscar De La Hoya, the golden boy. I'll just bring his record up there. 39-6 with 30 knockouts. The Olympic gold medalist in 1992. Turned pro in late 1992 with a first-round knockout of Lamar. Williams moved ahead pretty quickly. Again, I went over his record a couple of weeks ago when I put him in against Terence Crawford. Won the WBO super featherweight title against Jimmy Bradell in 1994. Had wins over Jorge Paez, John Molina, Rafael Ruiz, Gennaro Hernandez, Jesse James Leija, Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, Miguel Angel Gonzalez, just to name a few. Hector Camacho beat Chavez again in 98. That underrated win over Ike Corte. Obakar lost to Felix Trinidad in a questionable decision, a split decision that was, or majority decision it was, against Felix Trinidad. Lost twice to Shea Mosey, but had wins also against Arturo Gatti, Fernando Vargas, Felix Sturm. Went up to middleweight to fight Bernard Hopkins, beat Ricardo Mayorga. Lost, I thought, maybe a questionable decision to Floyd Mayweather Jr., but also over Steve Forbes and that loss to Manny Pacquiao in his last ever fight. Super chat from Andy. How are you there, mate? $10. Thank you very much, mate. Yep, smash the like button, please, for sure. Yeah, Glenn, yep. I would have bet the house on Aaron. Yeah. Look, I'm not going to argue with you there, Glenn, because he was a great fighter, Aaron Pryor. I'm not sure. We'll call that the number 11 fight, but I'm still going to back Kostya Tszyu against Aaron Pryor. As great as that would have been, we all remember Aaron Pryor with those wins over Alexis Arguello. But aside from the Arguello fight, I'm not sure he had many legacy type of fights in his career, Aaron Pryor, which wasn't his fault. I just don't think we've seen enough of him against real good natural 140-pounders to make that call over Kostya Tszyu, who was a rough and ready, solid 140-pounder, a natural 140-pounder. And as good as Aaron Pryor was, he still did have problems with Alexis Arguello, who was a blown-up featherweight. So that's why I'm going for Kostya. But that's a conversation for another time. All right, Glenn. Oscar always found a way to lose fights that really counted. Kostya on points. Let's go to the poll anyway before we get my prediction. All right. Now, where was it? Oscar De La Hoya? 67% went for Oscar De La Hoya to beat Kostya Tszyu. So only 33% for Kostya. Look, we'll go to Frankie first there. What do you got? Oscar would have been too sharp. I love Kostya, but even when it was spoken about the day as a matchup, I tipped Oscar. Look, a really tough one, Frankie. And this is probably one I've sort of gone back and forth with and really grappled with the result. I'm actually going to go against the grain. I'm going to go for Kostya Tszyu in this fight. And the reason I'm going to go for Kostya is because I just think Oscar's, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Kostya and Oscar. I just think Oscar's style at 140 we're talking about here, by the way. I think Oscar was more suited to maybe 147. I think was his perfect weight. This is at 147 where he probably wasn't as strong as what he was at 147 and 154 and, of course, 160. I just think that the style, as I say, styles make fights. I just think Oscar's stand-up style against Kostya would have allowed Kostya to maybe pinpoint his punches a lot better. Oscar didn't really move his head a lot either. He was, as I said, he was tall at 135 and tallish at 140. But that style of stand-up, again, as I said, not moving his head too much, standing right in front of Kostya, I just think that would have really played into Kostya's hands. I just think as the fight went on, I just think he would again break Oscar down. I'm not going to say he stops Oscar. I think the fight goes the distance, but I'm going to back Kostya Tszyu on points in this one. Don't get me wrong, rough, tough fight. I just think, I look at fights like, well, Trinidad's probably the one that stands out. The Ike Corte fight was another one. Just looking at those types of fights showed the vulnerabilities of Oscar. I'm not really going to count maybe Shea Mosley, different types of styles and all that sort of stuff. I just think at 140... that Kostya Tszyu, I just think he would have had a little bit too much for Oscar, and just the style would be custom made for Kostya. Now, this is what it sometimes comes down to. I'm not saying that Kostya Tszyu was maybe a better fighter than Oscar, or maybe deserved to be ranked higher in the pound-for-pound world rankings, whatever it was. I'm just saying the particular styles against each other. I think Kostya Tszyu wins this fight on points. Let's see some of your comments. Jules. My brain tells me I shouldn't, but I believe Kostya would have stopped De La Hoya. Like the Judah fight, Oscar might be slicker and better boxer, but lose concentration for a second and it's over. Yep, Oscar at his best. Yep, close fight, says Dennis. What's that there? What about 10 Mike Tysons versus the whole Golden List? Not sure about that one there, Ryan. Glenn, If Oscar had the discipline to stick to his excellent jab, I think he wins, but he had a habit of forgetting it mid-rounds for some reason. I'm with you there, Glenn. That's another reason why I'm going for Kostya Tszyu. I just think at some point, Oscar De La Hoya starts to trade a little bit with Kostya Tszyu. He might have success early, like you said, with that jab, that stand-up style and the reach and height and everything else. I just think as the fight went on, I just think Kostya closes the gap and starts to get to Oscar. I'm not quite sure Oscar had the ring smarts to maybe adjust and go back to the outside and box Kostya Tszyu. Call it a gut feel, but I'm going for Costa in this one. Glenn, Kostya Tszyu discipline over the 12 rounds. Yep. What about there, Daniel? I would have given a plum to watch this fight. Unbelievable, both guys. Oscar would have given Kostya plenty of opportunities to counter. And with that elite accuracy he had, I give the nod to Kostya Tszyu. You and I are seeming to agree a lot tonight, Daniel. Ryan, my bad, just tuned in based on Kostya. So you're picking him to win. Yeah, so there you go. I've got Kostya Tszyu on points in this one. Maybe 8-4, maybe even 7-5. It'd be close-ish, but Kostya Tszyu for me. All right, we've got 3 fights to go. Let's go to another really, really difficult one. And sorry, just as we're going here, guys, I haven't put Terence Crawford in here. Obviously, it makes sense considering he's probably one of the greatest 140-pound fighters of all time. I'm not putting him in because we had Kostya against Terence Crawford about 3 weeks ago when we did him, and I had him in against Kostya then, beating Kostya Tszyu in that fight, which is why he's not in this episode. All right, one guy that is in this episode is Sweet Pea, Pernell Whitaker, the late, great lightweight and welterweight world champion. Oh, hang on. I'll get to you in a second, Angry Mexican. 40 wins, 4 losses, and a draw, 17 knockouts. Turned pro in 1984 after winning an Olympic gold medal in LA, and turned pro with a second-round stoppage of Ferrain Cormeau. Now, before we move on, Angry Mexican, you don't think Oscar, a 6th division champion, had ring smarts? No, I didn't say that. I just don't think he had enough ring smarts against Kostya Tszyu. And what I mean by that is that we've seen Oscar in a lot of his fights go off his game plan, maybe not fight the smartest fight. Now, that sometimes went in his favour, but I just think against elite fighters like a Kostya Tszyu, it would go against them. Now, against, say, Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, he fought great fights. Hector Camacho, you name it, he did fight great fights. I'm not saying he didn't have ring smarts. I'm just saying that I've got a feeling against Kostya Tszyu, those ring smarts wouldn't be enough against Kostya. And I just think he would engage with Kostya, and if he did, I just think it falls into Kostya's hands, and I think he beats Oscar De La Hoya. Of course, as a 6th division world champion, you've got to have some sort of ring smarts, Angry Mexican. And I'm not saying he didn't have it. I just don't think he maybe had enough to beat Kostya Tszyu. That's just my thoughts anyway, mate. But you obviously disagree, and that's fine. All right, so Pernell Whitaker had his first opportunity in 1988 when he fought Jose Luis Ramirez for the WBC lightweight title. Lost a highly contentious split decision. Just before that, obviously, too, by the way, guys, he beat Roger Mayweather in 1987 in a non-title fight before that to earn the shot. But after that shot against Ramirez, he beat Greg Haugen in 1989 in a very one-sided decision to win the IBF lightweight title. Defended against Louis O'Malley. Luis Ramirez in the unification fight beat him by one-sided 12-round decision. Beat the likes of Azuma Nelson. Who else do we have there? Jorge Paez. Rafael Pineda was a very good fighter. Buddy McGirt for the WBC welterweight championship. Had a 12-round draw with Julio Cesar Chavez in a fight a lot of people thought he won. It was a majority draw. 2 judges had it even. The other had him in front, winning that fight. Had another win over Buddy McGirt. Beat the likes of Gary Jacobs for the WBC welterweight title. Jake Rodriguez in 95. 2 wins over Alfredo Rivera. Lost let's just say, disputed decision to Oscar De La Hoya in 97. Lost to Felix Trinidad in 99 and ended up coming back in 2001 and losing to Carlos Bojorquez. And that was the end of his career, and passed away, or was it 6-7 years ago? I can't remember exactly when, but tragic loss was Pernell Whitaker, Hall of Famer. And as I said, had a record of 40 wins, 40 losses. Sorry, 40 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw with 17 knockouts. Glenn, I don't know how Kostya gets to Pernell Whitaker on points. Well, let's go to the poll for starters, and then we'll get into my my call on this fight. Now, 58% of you out there went for Pernell Whitaker. 42% for Kostya Tszyu, which is probably a few more than what I thought. Because for me, I think that Pernell Whitaker wins this fight pretty clearly. Now, the easiest thing is to go to maybe the Zab Judah fight and look at that as a reference point, because Zab Judah fought a lot like Pernell Whitaker, southpaw stance, really slick, great on his feet, great with his hands, just great boxing IQ, great everything. But Zab Judah got caught, so it's really hard to say how the fight would have went. I just think Pernell Whitaker, the amount of fighters probably like a Kostya Tszyu who are flat-footed, not overly fast with their hands or feet, he made them look second-rate. And I just think this is a case of Pernell Whitaker really just picking apart Kostya Tszyu over the journey, and I think he wins a one-sided 12-round decision to the point where it could be 9-3, even 10-2, something like that. I just think Pernell Whitaker really puts on a masterclass against Kostya. And again, it just comes down to styles. I'm not trying to downplay Kostya Tszyu's relevance here, because we've tipped him obviously against a lot of other great fighters. But I just think in this instance with the styles, I just think Pernell Whitaker, he's all wrong for Kostya Tszyu, and I think Pernell Whitaker wins, very, very clear-cut 12-round decision. So Jules says, yep, sweet pea. Daniel says, got Whitaker here, frustrates Kostya and outpoints him. Yeah, that's my point of view as well. Daniel, that Kostya wins this fight by one-sided 12-round decision. So keep the comments coming. I'll go back to them if you want to keep putting them up there. But we will move on to the second last fight. And these two, wow. Let's start with the first one. We're going to go with the hands of stone. Manos Di Piedra, Roberto Duran, the undisputed lightweight champion and the just numerous world titles over different weight divisions, had a record of 103 wins, 16 losses with 70 knockouts. Just an amazing record, did Roberto Duran. We'll go right back to, what year was it when he won the lightweight championship? It was, I think I've gone past it there, whatever. Former world champion. I'm just going to go back to see when he did actually win. It was against Jim White, wasn't it? Was it he actually lost a non-title fight to Esteban de Jesus in 1972. Just trying to find that fight. He avenged that loss. I can't find it. You'd think I'd be able to find that fight, wouldn't you? When he beat, I'm sure he beat Jim Watt. No, we'll move on because I can't find it. I can assure you he won the world lightweight title and moved up in 1980 to have that great fight and great win over Sugar Ray Leonard in Montreal in November of 1980. And he lost to Sugar Ray Leonard later in the year, but I think we can give him a bit of a mulligan in the no mass fight when he didn't really train for the fight. He lost a fight against Wilfred Benitez a couple of years later for the WBC 154-pound title. Had an upset loss to Kirkland Lang just after that, which was the upset of the year back in the day. But come back and had a good win over Pepino Cuevas in 1983 to set up a world title fight with Davey Moore in 1983. Madison Square Garden. What a memorable night that was. Stopped him in 8 rounds to win the WBA 154-pound title. Went up, lost to Marvin Hagler in 1983, and then was obliterated by Thomas the Hitman Hearns in 1984. And a lot of people thought that was going to be the end of Roberto Duran, but no, he kept fighting on. He even had a loss along the way to Marvelous Marvin Hagler's not twin brother, his stepbrother, I think it was, or half brother, in Robbie Sims. But beat Iran the Blade Barkley in 1989 in a massive upset to win the WBC 160-pound title. Lost the rubber match against Sugar Ray Leonard in later in 1989. I think that was the first fight at the Mirage Hotel and Casino. Lost an upset fight to Pat Lawler in his fight after that. And then, again, we thought he was gone. He had those 2 memorable fights with Vinny Pazienza. Also fought Hector Camacho as well. Just an unbelievable fighter over the years, and lost a second time to Hector Camacho in 2001 to end with that 103-16 record. So 119 fights for Manos Di Piedra Roberto Duran. All right, guys, so who we got? We'll go to the poll for starters, then I'll get some comments. 58% went for Roberto Duran to beat Kostya Tszyu. Now, again, this is at 140. Now, this is a little bit of an asterisk fight, this one as well, because Roberto Duran never fought at 140. He went right from 135 up to 147. I'll just double confirm that, by the way. When was it? Yeah, so he went from actually, he fought at 142 in 1978. But up to that point had been a lightweight. But I did actually thought that the fight with Leonard was his first one at welterweight, but it wasn't. It actually had 8 fights at 147 before he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Well, that's news to me because I thought that was his first fight. But yeah, fought all the way up to 168. Just an amazing career. Who we got, guys? Dennis says Prime Duran KOs Kostya. Glenn says Duran. Daniel says Prime Duran runs over Kostya. Relentless pressure, great chin, and insane work rate. Too much for Kostya, as he was with most fighters. Yeah. Glenn, all wrong for Kostya. Yeah, I think style-wise, that Roberto Duran would be too much for Kostya. Now, look, would it be an easy fight for Duran? By no means. No, I don't think it would be. I think, look, you've got to give Kostya Tszyu his credit in this, for what he did as well. I know it's just the automatic thing just to say that Roberto Duran would have won this fight, but I think this would have been a great fight. I think at 140, though, 135 to 140, again, it's a hard one because Duran never fought at 140. He went straight from 135 to 147. But let's just be hypothetical here and say that if it was at 140, I just think very, very underrated speed, both with his feet and with his hands, Roberto Duran. We all know that he could punch. And I just think as the fight went on, I think he'd outbox Kostya early. And I think later in the fight, maybe in the 8th or 9th round, I think he would lower the boom with a right hand or something and drop Kostya, which would be no mean feat with Kostya. I mean, he was a hard one to rock and get out of there with Kostya. The only one that did that was Vernon Phillips, of course. But I think Roberto Duran could get the job done. I think, as I said, he'd outbox Kostya early, and I think he would lower the boom somewhere around the 8th or 9th round and stop Kostya Tszyu. So any more figures or opinions there? Duran, for sure, says pound for pound king. Yeah, look, I don't think it'll be an easy fight. I really don't. I think it would be a really, really tough one. Again, as I said, Kostya Tszyu was an all-time great as well. As great as Duran was, Tszyu was a Hall of Fame legend as well. But I'm going to go with Duran in this one by stoppage. All right, we've got one more fight to get through, and this is probably the hardest one of all, especially for Kostya Tszyu. I'm referring to Floyd Money Mayweather. Or was it Pretty Boy Floyd then? Let's just say it's Money. The Olympic, was he a bronze medalist? Was Floyd Mayweather. Retired with a record of 50 wins, 0 losses, and 27 knockouts. Returned pro in 1996 after Olympic Games with a second-round stoppage of Roberto is it Apodaca? I think that's how you pronounce it. Apodacia. And then just cut through all the 135 to 140 pound. Actually, sorry, wasn't about to say 140 pound. I was actually at 130 to 135. So got his first world title fight in, when was it, 1998 against Gennaro Hernandez, and then we'll just go through them. Some epic fights against the likes of Diego Corrales, Jose Luis Castillo. We all remember the questionable first fight. It made no question about the second fight, though, with a lopsided decision over Castillo in the rematch. But over the likes of Arturo Gatti, Shambo Mitchell, Zab Judah, Carlos Baltimore, Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Juan Manuel Marquez, Shane Mosley, Victor Ortiz, Miguel Cotto, you name it, Canelo Alvarez, Marcos Medina, Manny Pacquiao, Andre Berde, and we won't mention that MMA fighter he fought in his 50th fight. So what do we think, guys? Floyd Money Mayweather or Kostya Tszyu? Let's go to the polls for starters. And 67% of you out there said that Floyd Money Mayweather would win this fight. So, of course, only 33% said that Kostya Tszyu would win this fight. Pound for Pound King says, where is it there? Floyd would just find a way to adjust and win like he always did. I actually fancy Kostya against Floyd, says Glenn. He says he'd win on points. Tony Clifton, sorry, came in far too late, but I have Kostya over Floyd. Too strong. There you go. Well, welcome to the show, Tony. Jules, this would be one of those fights where Kostya would put it on him for 12 rounds. Floyd gets the decision. Everyone thinks Kostya was robbed. Floyd versus Kostya didn't happen for a reason. Frankie says Floyd too slick. I'm going to agree with you, Frankie. This would have been a tough fight, don't get me wrong. I think you talk about styles, and I always thought that when Floyd fought Manny Pacquiao, that Manny's style would be all wrong for Floyd as far as that rat-a-tat style, in and out, with the fast punches, throwing 4, 5, 6 punches at a time would trouble Floyd, but I think it was the opposite. I think he actually played into Floyd's hands, and that's why I think maybe the opposite might be true in this respect, that Kostya, who I thought would really struggle against Floyd Mayweather because he didn't throw as many punches, wasn't as fast with his feet or his hands, he might struggle, but I actually think that would actually work in his favour, Kostya Tszyu. I think he'd be able to cut Floyd off. I think he'd probably have success by, rather than just throwing punches with reckless abandon like Pacquiao did and some other fighters did, being a little bit more methodical about the way he went about it. I think Kostya Tszyu would give Floyd all he could handle, and we know that Kostya was a very, very good puncher, and Floyd didn't really like being roughed up, which I think Kostya would do. Having said that, I think Kostya would make all the necessary adjustments that he did in 50 other fights, 49 fights, let's not include that last one. I think Floyd would make the adjustments during the fight, and I think he'd have some issues with Kostya, especially early. I think he would probably around the mid to maybe later rounds would be pretty even. I just think maybe Floyd finds a way to win the last 3 or 4 rounds and get the decision in this one. I'm not going to say it'd be disputed. I think it'd be unanimous, but there might be a few that thinks that Kostya Tszyu might have got it. But I just think I'd liken it almost to the Maidana fight, where a lot of people thought Maidana won the fight, but in reality, if you watch it, Floyd did enough to win. Maidana gave him lots of problems, make no question about that, but I still think Floyd did more than enough to win, and I think this would be a similar type of fight where there would be plenty that would think that Kostya won the fight, and he would give a great account of himself. It wouldn't be one-sided at all, and Kostya would certainly have his moments. I just think that Floyd Mayweather would do enough to win and win a 12-round decision. I'm going to say maybe 8 rounds to 4. A lot of close rounds in there as well. All right, what do we got? Daniel, Floyd too quick, too smart. What's that there? Ryan, problem with boxing, the best dodge the best. Business, not boxing. Bring back the 80s and 90s. Yep. Floyd mastered the art and the business of boxing. Mayweather camp knew Kostya was a threat at the time. Yeah, Jules. That's from Jules. I think, was it this fight that Glenn Jennings said that was really close to being made, or was it maybe the Oscar fight they said was really close to being made at some point? I'm with you, though, Jules. I think if Floyd Mayweather had a chance to maybe bypass Kostya, he would have, because he would have been a very, very tough fight. And as I said, I just think Kostya's style is all wrong for Floyd Mayweather. But again, Floyd Mayweather, to me, is in the top probably 5 pound-for-pound fighters of all time. I just think he has that knack, or had that knack, of being able to adjust, and I think he would do it against Kostya in a tough fight, but I just think he wins 8 rounds to 4. All right, Glenn disagrees. He says Kostya's timing would be the difference. Pound for pound says Maidana roughed him up for 5 rounds and he made the adjustment to win the last 7 rounds. That's my point, pound for pound. That's why I think Mayweather wins this fight. Glenn says Floyd wouldn't have seen Kostya's style. I think he struggles with him. Always thought that. Yeah, I'm with you, Glenn. I'm not saying that the fight would be easy. I think that Floyd would 100% struggle with Kostya's style. I just think Floyd Mayweather is in the top 5 pound for pound of all time for a reason, in my books anyway. I just think he would find a way to get the job done. All right, so let's recap all the fights, shall we? We'll go right back to Timothy Bradley, and 96% went for Kostya Tszyu. I agreed and said he would win a 12-round decision over Timothy Bradley. Hector Camacho, 92% went for Kostya. I agreed. I'm not going to go by my absolute predictions as far as stoppages and decisions goes, guys, but I'll just say I went for Kostya Tszyu in that one. Meldrick Taylor, 91% went for Kostya Tszyu. I agreed. I think a lot closer than a 91% win to Kostya Tszyu, though. That would be a very, very tough fight for Kostya, but I'm going to back him to beat Meldrick Taylor. Vinny Pazienza, the same. 87% went for Kostya Tszyu. I agree that he would get to Pazienza and maybe stop him late. Miguel Cotto, 70% went for Kostya Tszyu. I agree and went for Kostya Tszyu, probably late round stoppage as well. Manny Pacquiao, 57% went for Manny Pacquiao to win this fight, and I agreed. Too fast for Kostya Tszyu, in my opinion. Oscar De La Hoya was at 67% went for Oscar De La Hoya. I actually disagreed and thought that Kostya Tszyu would beat Oscar De La Hoya. Pernell Whitaker, 58% went for Pernell Whitaker. I agreed and thought it would be pretty much a shutout for Sweet Pea. Roberto Duran, 58% went for Roberto Duran. I agreed. Not easy, though. I think this would be an excellent fight. I just think Duran would get the stoppage late in the fight. And Floyd Mayweather Jr., 67% went for Floyd Mayweather to win this fight, and I agree. I think he beats Kostya Tszyu on points in this one. All right, a couple more comments before we go. Glenn, not pound for pound of all time. Well, that's your opinion, mate. I just think he, without a doubt, mate. And hey, we all say, oh, well, Rocky Marciano, he was undefeated and this and that. Floyd Mayweather never lost a fight, mate. 50-0, and some of the fighters he was in with over that journey, geez, all Hall of Famers. I could just probably count 20 Hall of Famers off the top of my head that Floyd Mayweather beat. So whether you liked him or not, doesn't come down to whether you liked him personally or you like his style or you like the way he went about it. I just can't see a lot of fighters that were above him as far as pound for pound goes. I think he was an all-time great. And we're using the Rocky Marciano logic, undefeated in 50 pro fights. So, all right, Jules, just shows how good Kostya was, that people still debate whether he would have beat Mayweather, sometimes lost on the Australian public. Yep, for sure. Jules, what's that, Frankie? Thanks for another good one. Up earth for work, so off to bed. Up early for work, okay, off to bed. Check in tomorrow for walking boxing. Good stuff, Frankie. Thanks for tuning in, mate. And a super chat to finish off from Dennis, $5. Great format, mate. Lots of fun. Good stuff, mate. Really appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Now, next week's going to be a little different. Actually, a comment from Daniel before we go. Top 2 or 3 pound for pound without question. Thanks, Daniel. You obviously agree. We tend to agree a lot. And as I say, great minds think alike, mate. So thanks for backing me up. But look, I'm going to do a little bit different next week. I'm not quite sure who to put up. So in the meantime, send me your suggestions for who to have next. But next week, I'm going to do what I've been promising to do for about the last four weeks, is to have the best pound for pound fights in each division of all time. So the best heavyweight fight, the best lightweight fight, the best welterweight fight, whatever it is, we're going to pit, in my opinion, the 2 best fighters that we can pit against each other in each division. So not one particular fighter, it's each division we're going to go through. But again, in the meantime, send me all the suggestions for who you want next. There's a lot of guys out there. Could it be a Naoya Inoue? Could it be I'm just sort of, who have we got out there at the moment as well? I don't know. Tank Davis. I don't care who it is. Put their name up and we'll put them on the list. But next week it'll be 12. Is it 12 divisions? Whatever it is, whatever all the divisions are, the best dream fights that can possibly be made in each division, and see what we think of the results. So guys, thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. Make sure you tune in for Talking Boxing next Monday night, Walking Boxing every morning as well. And we'll see you next week in another episode of Dream Fights. Catch you then.